It's the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast. If you don't know, now you know. If you ain't listening, why not? Boom.
This is the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Scotty, Brian, and Mike, with the quick picks that'll make you the quick bucks. We're going to succinctly cover the quick picks that'll make you money. Let's get into it. First off, I'm going to go ahead and start us off with some quarterback. And I've been leaning kind of heavy on some Kyler Murray. He's sitting at 6,100 right now. They don't have the most range point total for the games. He's sitting at 46.5 points as the Vegas estimated point total. But I still think that even if Kyler Murray can't actually get you some passes, he can still run it out. I mean, he's shown over and over that he's doing that. And the whole NFL is showing that they're leaning more towards quarterbacks that can actually run as well. He's finally got some weapons on his side. He's got Hopkins on there and Fitz, who's always been a solid receiver. And if he can't get you points, you know, he'll always vulture that touchdown, which he got away with one earlier. So I think that, you know, some way or another, he's going to get you points, whether it be throwing or passing.
I think Kyler Murray could do well, but I am a little concerned about Washington's defensive front with them. They really gave Carson Wentz some issues, and Arizona's offensive line isn't the best.
Yeah, I could see that, but he knows how to run out of the pocket. So that's what makes me feel a little bit more comfortable playing him, especially sitting at 6,100.
Yeah.
All right. And Scott, go ahead and get us off with the next one.
All right. So the quarterback I like this week, I'm actually liking some Matt Stafford going against Green Bay. He is coming off of a game with 42 attempts. I think it's in the top 5 or 6 for week 1. So, you know, the Lions are always happy to let him air it out if necessary. It is a 49.5 point total, which I think is the third highest, or tied for the third highest, with Detroit coming in as 6-point underdogs. He is at a pretty good price point at 6,200, and he can be paired with some relatively cheap receivers if Golladay is still sitting out. But yeah, I do like him from purely a value standpoint this week. I don't think people are going to be looking at him as much.
Yeah, and he can always get you some garbage time points. There's no doubt about that.
True.
Yeah, I really like him this week as well, going up against Rodgers, who was even passing the ball when they were up by 20 points. So it's that's definitely a target game for a blowout or a blow up.
Yeah.
I guess one of the quarterbacks I was looking at would be Tom Brady versus Carolina at 6,500. Carolina showed last week they have a great offense, but not a very good defense. I'm expecting them to be able to push for points against Tampa Bay, who still has a very good defense, but I'm thinking the offense will overcome and we could possibly get a shootout, and Tom Brady wants to prove to the world he's still the best quarterback in football right now. So I'm playing him this week.
Yeah, I could see that. Also, I feel like a lot of people, well, at least ESPN and Newswise, they've been completely off of Tom Brady. They're like, oh, he's washed, he's done, he's bad. So I could see that being a big bounce back game.
True.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to some running backs. And there we're going to start off with Scotty.
Okay, so this week I'm kind of looking at some of the cheaper running backs. For this one, I'm kind of looking at a running back duo, more or less. I'm liking some Devin Singletary / Zach Moss going against Miami. They did end up kind of splitting the workload 50-50 in week 1, so it is a little tricky to pick which one's going to be the better of the two. They are going against a Miami defense that was like dead last against the rush in 2019, and they did allow the most rushing yards in week 1 going against New England. Like I said before, they are sitting at a really good price point. Singletary is sitting at 5,200 and Moss is sitting at 4,800.
I mean, do you know who you're going to try to target between the two, or are you just going to try to make sure to fit one of them in there?
I like Moss a little bit more. He did get the touchdown in week 1, and he is a little bit cheaper, so I do like him just at that lower price point, but it is kind of hard to not include both of them.
Interesting. I definitely didn't look at that at all.
And not to mention, I think Buffalo's favored by 6 or 7 in that game.
The only thing, I'd be a little bit worried about Allen vulturing some of those touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think he was the leading rusher for the team in week 1.
I can believe it. All right, Mike.
Yeah, that would the touchdown vulturing would definitely be something I was concerned with, too, with those cheap bags. The running back I'm going to go with this week is Saquon Barkley at Chicago for $8,400. It's a steep price to pay, but because of that, it's going to drive ownership down. And Saquon Barkley he's a candidate for 20 points any given week. He's the best pure talent running back in the NFL. In a vacuum, he's better than Christian McCaffrey. Even in bad matchups, he can come out and produce 20 points. So take advantage of the recency bias of last week's bad performance and play that as leverage this week with elite talent.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He didn't look bad at all in the game against the Steelers when it came to getting some of his passes and hurdling over players. And I mean, he looked good. It's just the Steelers' defense was elite. So I can definitely see. I was looking at him as well, but I was just like, $8,400. I definitely agree. I was worried about that steep price, but I like that point about it being, a deterrent for other people being on him. So now, one that I wanted to go over, which is definitely dependent on a certain situation, is I was looking at some Benny Snell. I mean, that is just the chalk if Connor is out. He had, I think it was a high ankle sprain, and they're not sure if he's going to play. Benny Snell was looking great out there. He's sitting at 4,500. I know that the Steelers lost some linemen, which that, kind of hurts a little bit. But still, the way he runs, and Steelers like to depend on their workhorse running back, I definitely want to put him in there. I'm probably going to load him up if Connor's out, no matter what. Because, that's just a situation that I think is going to pan out pretty good, especially at the price point sitting at 4,500. He's at least going to get you 15 points, 10 to 15 points at least, in my opinion.
I don't know if Benny Snell is that great a chalk.
You don't think so?
Only because it's going against the Broncos defense.
True. Against
that O-line that's been hurt.
But they've also lost some pieces on defense as well.
They have, but they played pretty well the other night. I just feel like there's better options that maybe not be quite as cheap that will return more value, because also the floor and the pricing for running backs has been raised to 4,000.
Yeah.
So you're not getting them quite as cheap as you did last year. So you really need to make sure the cheap running back can produce in the situation.
Yeah, I could see it, but I definitely am going to have him in a good percentage of my lineups if Connor is on. So I don't think you have me 100% sold against him. All right. Well, let's move on to wide receiver, and I'll go ahead and start us out. And I'm going to go with, let me see if Scotty can guess it.
C.Y. Hilton.
Damn it. You nailed it on that. I mean, I know I've made sure to stay away from some Phillip Rivers today, just for you. Even though I still love that matchup. I think he's great indoors. He's at home against the Vikings, who is one of the weakest secondaries in the league. He's sitting at 5,700 as a wide receiver 1. I know Phillip Rivers doesn't have the gun that he had in previous years, but he still looked at him. He was sitting there. He had 9 targets, and all he needs to do is increase some of those receptions. The game itself is sitting at a 48-point total, Plus, they lost Marlon Mack, so Taylor is the only running back, and he's a rookie. So, being that situation, I kind of am going to lean on some T.Y. Hilton, just as Scotty called.
Well, I definitely like T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell as well, for that matter. But I think the wide receiver I'm going to go after is CeeDee Lamb versus Atlanta at 4,700. Blake Jarwin, unfortunately, is out for the season, and that's going to free up some targets in the Dallas offense. Atlanta has a horrible defense, and CeeDee Lamb profiles as an alpha receiver. He's a rookie. Many believe that is the best receiver in this class. I expect him to come out and have a big game for that 4,700 price point.
I like that pick. I didn't even look at him, but he's looking solid, especially against that weak defense.
Well, that's the second highest total of the week? Isn't it like 52? The Dallas-Atlanta game?
Yeah, I believe.
Oh, it is?
Right now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm at 52 and a half.
All right. Well, for my receiver this week, I'm going to go back to Detroit. I'm looking at some Quintez Cephas. Is that how you say his name? I'm actually not sure. He's sitting at a really low price point at 3,800, going into a matchup against Green Bay. He did have 10 targets week 1. Granted, that was, a Lions team without Kenny Golladay, but it does look like Galladay's still kind of in a questionable phase. He didn't practice today, so there seems to be a pretty good chance he might not suit up for this game against Green Bay. Like I said before, this is going to be a matchup where Detroit's going to be playing from behind. They are 6-point underdogs, but he's sitting at a really good price point. I'm a little worried that he might end up being kind of high owned just because he is such a good price point and he had such a, not necessarily productive week 1, but he did have a lot of targets in week 1 with 10.
Yeah, I mean, aren't you worried because there are a bunch of receivers ahead of him?
Well, he led the team in targets week 1.
Yeah, I believe he had 10 targets.
Right. He only pulled in 3 of them, so he didn't really put up too many points, but, hopefully he gets a little more consistent in week 2. Gets that extra little bit of chemistry with Stafford.
Do you think that pick is dependent on Kenny Golladay being out?
I would say yes, yeah. If Golladay steps back in, I don't see him having as big of a role.
Yeah.
Like I said, he didn't practice today, Wednesday, so it's looking like maybe a 50-50 chance whether or not he suits up.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to tight end. Mike, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the well with Dallas Goedert versus the Rams at 5,000. Last week, he caught 8 of 9 targets and a touchdown, and Ertz was targeted 8 times.
Got the 100-point bonus.
Yeah, he got that 100-point bonus, and what I'm really looking at is that the targets for Goedert and Ertz are even. Or actually, Goedert had one more target than Ertz if you're nitpicking. But as long as Ertz is priced higher than Goedert is a value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. You absolutely nailed that pick last week. There's no doubt about that, especially at that price point. All right. Let me go over my tight end pick for the week, which one that I've been looking at was Jonnu Smith. He carried in 4 of his 7 targets for the last game. Tennessee typically plays leaning on the running back performance with short passes for first downs and leaning on, of course, Derrick Henry, the beast. And I don't think Jacksonville is going to be able to do what they were able to do before. Both A.J. Brown and Davis are currently questionable. And I think that could lead towards more targets for Jonnu Smith.
I definitely don't mind Smith at all. They were finding ways to get him involved during the game the other night.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, he's sitting at 4,200, so he's definitely at a cheap price point. Scotty, you want to cover one?
So the only one I'm looking at right now, some Logan Thomas going against Arizona. This is more just a matter of picking on Arizona's lack of tight end defense. He did have 4 targets and a touchdown this previous week against Philadelphia. He's sitting at a really good price point at 3,600. He's technically not the the tight end 1 for Washington, but Sprinkle does seem to be more like the run blocking tight end. So it looks like he's kind of stepping into this role as being more of the receiving tight end of the two. And it's a fairly high total at 47.5, with Washington coming in as 6-point underdogs. So they will need to throw the ball quite a bit to keep up.
Yeah, and they're lacking in receiver a lot, so I could see them making up for that by throwing it to the tight end.
All right, I like Logan Thomas, especially as a Washington fan, but I am a little worried that the narrative of the Cardinals being a bad defense against tight ends might be a little false. Last season, they were horrible against tight ends, but Patrick Peterson was hurt a lot last season. This season, he's healthy, and we haven't had... Kittle didn't have any sort of blow-up game last week. Of course, he got hurt during the middle of it, so we could chalk it up to that, but there's a big possibility that them being bad against tight ends last season had more to do with their star safety playing injured the majority of last season.
All right. Well, let's move on to defense. And Scott, you're going to go ahead and start us off with that.
So defenses are kind of tricky this week. I feel like defenses are getting a little harder, getting a little harder and harder to pick.
Absolutely.
For mine, I'm kind of going outside of the box here. I'm going to pick some Denver going against Pittsburgh. I know it's a road matchup, but that really shouldn't matter as much with the whole COVID thing and no fans and all that garbage. They are at a good price point at 2,500. Honestly, the primary reason I'm picking this defense is Ben is one good hit away from being knocked out or being at less than 100%. He did take some injuries in week 1, and that Broncos defense, I feel like it gets a little underrated at times.
Yeah. I mean, here I am choosing the other side of that.
Yeah, I figured.
I mean, the Steelers just looked so good. I mean, I know Saquon still got some receiving yards, but they kept Saquon Barkley, who is one of the most incredible running backs in the league right now, to 6 rushing yards on 15 attempts. I think they said that was the first time since the 1990s that's ever happened. I mean, the defense looks incredible. Like you said, if Ben goes out, I think it's a completely different story. But as long as Ben's sitting in there and he's looking good, I think that they can pull off a big game on defense. They were able to get 2 interceptions, and they're also sitting at one of the lowest totals of the week, sitting at 41.5 points. Plus, it's Drew Lock, who's still a young quarterback, who's more prone to mistakes. So that's kind of where my head's at.
I like either of those defenses. With what Steelers did to Saquon, he had negative 0.7 yards before contact last week against the Steelers, and that's why he couldn't get anywhere, was because he was hit right as he was handed the ball. And the Broncos defense does always seem to go a little underrated, and they also might have more opportunities with the sophomore QB dealing and struggling with this growing offense.
Mike, was there any defense you wanted to cover?
I'll take the Chiefs at the Chargers for 3,400.
I can see that.
Their offense was horrible last week. The Bengals defense is nothing to write home about, and they cannot score against them. They're not using Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. They're pretty much taking deep shots to Michael Williams, and it is just not working out for them.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't using Eckler like at all.
Yeah.
Let's move on to sneaky pick of the week. One that I was sitting on was Darius Slayton. As far as that Monday night game went, I think Darius Slayton, he's sitting at $5,000, and he just looks like the best player on the team. Once Jones got some rhythm and actually got moving, he was actually, he was getting him some targets. He had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 2 touchdowns. He definitely, once they got a rhythm, they got going. It's going against Chicago, which I know Chicago wasn't the highest scoring total, but we always know that there can be some garbage time points between any game with Chicago, whether it be, Chicago's down by a bunch or they get up by a bunch by some miracle, which Trubisky always seems to figure out somehow. And like random games, I think there's potential that like they're going to lean on Darius Slayton as far as him being one of the best receivers on the Giants team.
Is he really that sneaky though after getting 31 points last week? That's my only concern. Like, I don't disagree with the pick. I just don't know if he's that sneaky.
Yeah, I guess I was looking more at the price point than anything.
Yeah, I'm not thinking he's going to be too low owned just because of the blowout performance last week.
I guess I was like kind of looking at the fact that it's going to be kind of a more lower scoring game according to Vegas, and the fact that people might not lean on him because he's not the number one guy. Okay, proven wrong.
I'll go ahead with one. I like Laviska Shenault at Tennessee for 200 or 4,200. He's another rookie receiver, but last week he had 4 targets and 2 rush attempts, and he's the second receiver in that offense opposite DJ Chark. The team seems to be finding ways to get him the ball, and I only think his opportunity is going to grow. He's a really dynamic receiver, and he'll be able to be used in multiple ways. Tennessee defense is a little tough, but they did lose some pieces, I believe. AJ Bouye, or however you say his name, one of the cornerbacks, he got hurt. So maybe expecting a breakout performance from Laviska Shenault.
I like that pick. All right, Scotty, do you have one?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I kind of struggled this week. I couldn't really find one that I could really get behind.
Well, I chose one, and it's not sneaky, apparently. So I'll take it. And we're going to kind of add a new segment in here, everybody. We're going to cover a recap from last week and what we got right, what we got wrong. One that I wanted to start us all off with is the fact that all of us were kind of targeting the Atlanta Seahawks game, and that was definitely a blowout game on both sides, and it was definitely a game to target and keep everybody in on. So I just wanted to kind of cover that quickly, and you guys go ahead and take over from here.
Well, yeah, I think maybe we should start with what we got right last week. I know for me, my best pick was Dallas Goedert. He was 4,100. He's put up 27.1 fantasy points. That's almost 7 times his value, and he came in 3.64% owned.
Nice.
Yeah, so he definitely grew into that role, and you got him at a cheap point.
Yeah. Last week, I feel like I did a good job with the Robbie Anderson pick. He was he got 28.5 DraftKings points, and he was only about 5% owned, or at least in the contest I was playing. So I think I nailed that with, sitting at that price point of 4,700. As far as a pick that didn't quite pan out, I would have to say Eckler. He just seemed to have disappeared in the game. It didn't really, it was kind of confusing as to why they just kind of stopped using him. I don't know. Let's see, he only got 9.7.
Yeah, which, I mean, for the potential that Eckler has, I think we can expect a higher ceiling from him in the future.
Right.
Oh yeah, we just hope those targets go up. But
yeah,
right.
Yeah, one I didn't get right, or there. I feel I had two big misses last week, and aside from Marlon Mack getting hurt, but Chris Thompson and Brian Edwards. Chris Thompson, you should have been pivoting to Boston Scott anyways if you were keeping up with injury news. But Brian Edwards only had one target. He did carry about an 80% snap share, which is a good sign for future weeks. Maybe someone to target later on down the road. But Ruggs was definitely the feature of that offense if you follow the targets.
Well, let's go ahead and move on to the gut check.
Ooh, gut check!
Mike, do you want to start us off with that?
Sure, let me get over here. At QB, I think I'm actually going to go with one of Scotty's picks, Matthew Stafford. And then I want to stack him at running back with DeAndre Swift. And I will throw in Marvin Jones at wide receiver.
Full stack.
And then run it back with Devontae Adams. I think I'm going to get some Jonathan Taylor. And I want to go down and set my defense just to get a better idea of the prices I'm working with.
Makes sense.
I think I'll go with the Broncos defense. Be the cheaper of the two options.
Makes sense.
My third wide receiver, I'm gonna throw in Shenault.
I do like that pick.
And tight end, didn't touch on him, but I also like O.J. Howard this week going against Carolina.
Yeah, Gronk just kind of seems like a figurehead.
Yeah. And then in the flex, I'll go with Saquon Barkley.
Yep, you can fit him in there. Perfect. All right. So, let me go ahead and start us off with one. Let's see here. I'm going to go with my Kyler Murray, and I'm going to go with him naked because, like you said, Washington is pretty good against wide receivers, and I think he's going to have to run it to get his points values. Let's see. One that I didn't touch on, but I kind of like a lot, is Miles Sanders, because he's also a receiving running back, and he's supposed to be fully back. I also think that Philadelphia didn't take Washington seriously last week, so I thought they could rest him thought that they could rest him for another week and get him ready for the next game. So I think they've got something to prove. Plus, they're going against the LA Rams defense, which is 30th against the running back. Let's see here. Let me go with my other running back. I'm going to touch back on Snell. And again, this will change if Connor is in a game. I won't be playing Snell. From there, let's see what we got. I feel like everybody's priced up this week. Let me go with, of course, some T.Y. Hilton. Just kind of like Mike did. I'm going to look at my defense real quick, see if I can get a little better range of what I'm looking at. Let's see. Let me go. I know it's going to be paying up, but I'm going to pay for some Bills defense. From tight end, I think I might go with exactly what you did, Mike, and go with some O.J. Howard. And we got 2 wide receivers in the flex. Go with my Darius Slayton, who I know is not so sneaky apparently. Sitting at $74.50 per person. And I'm going to go with some Marquise Brown just because that game's going to be a shootout. And add to it, I'm going to follow you again, Mike. Or, well, actually, let me differentiate. I'm going to go with some Zeke. And that is my lineup.
Alright, so I guess that concludes this week of the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast. Hopefully you guys can take these picks and go out there and win you some money. That's going to do it for us. Peace.